Welcome back to FPL Therapy, the weekly podcast hosted by me, FPL Raptor, where each week we are joined by a different guest. And for blank Gameweek 34, I'm delighted to say that we finally have Tom in the studio, host of the brilliant Who Got the Assist, which has been going for how many seasons now?
I think we're looking at, coming to season 9 next year, so quite a while.
9 seasons. So an OG of content creation. He is definitely not new to podcasts, but if you do enjoy long-form content, and also if you've enjoyed Pricey, Sam's appearances on FPL Therapy this season, he's the co-host of Who Got the Assist. So please do check it out. Definitely a refreshing content. And obviously because Tom's been playing the game for such a long time, he knows the ins and outs very well, especially when it comes to the back end of the season around chip strategy. And he's actually on a different strategy to a lot of other people, which is going to be interesting to talk about this week. So, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. Thanks for having me on. Very amazing to be on the Therapy podcast. And to be honest, after a bit of a dodgy season thus far, I'm on free hit this week. So, it's a different sort of take. And I think we need some therapy, just talk about why I've gone that way, what I've done. So the perfect place to be, I think, with you, Ross. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
No worries. And you actually have a background, quite an extensive background in like psychology as well. And that's how we first got to talking. And that one of my first pieces of content that I ever did before I had a YouTube channel, one of the things that actually got me to potentially start my YouTube channel, because it got such positive comments, the episode we did, it was me, you, and Simon March.
Yes.
And we spoke about psychology and behavioral economics for about, how long was the recording before you edited it? It must have been like 3.5, 4 hours.
Yeah, I think we started at kind of 10:30, and then we must have been going on to about 11, until about 1, actually, something like that. I think we got to 11, just kind of mashing out exactly what we were going to talk about. Yeah. It was like the psychology of a whole kind of season, the psychology of one particular game week. And yeah, it was absolutely fascinating stuff, honestly. And yeah, it's just so cool to meet somebody who had a similar sort of interest in that sort of thing to me, like behavioral science and everything. Exactly. Was like kind of part of the reasons why I started my pod, just because it was a different slant. And here we are.
Perfect. Maybe pre-season next season, whether it be on Who Got the Assist or on Therapy, we'll do a bit of a pre-season psychology episode, because I think people enjoy those. This podcast does continue to be sponsored by Club, so please do check that out. There is a link down below in the description. We'll talk about Club a little bit more later today, but it is now live and available to download for the remainder of the season, and big things are coming soon. I can't tell you too much more, but definitely check it out. And if you are watching on YouTube, firstly, massive thank you. We did hit 15,000 subscribers recently, which was the target for the season. So that is amazing. So feel free to not subscribe, but if you do want to, I really appreciate it. And if you're listening on audio, please do rate 5-star. It really goes a long way. So, as I said, you are on a different strategy to a lot of other people. So you free hit in 33.
I did.
Is that your remaining chips?
That's gone. I'm chipless for the rest of the season, yeah.
Okay, and I think that will be really useful for people this week, is because I am hyper fixating on free hit 34, obviously, because that's what I'm doing. And I think based on polls, it's around 60 to 70% of people are playing the free hit this week. So I will obviously focus on that, but it's going to be great because you are not on free hit in 34. So you can discuss players to buy and players that might be good not only for 34, but for the remainder of the season. So I think it'll be good to have both strategies today. But for your free hit, when I found out you'd free hitted before I'd actually seen your team, I was like, oh no, it's probably not very good, because the people that I've seen that are free hitted haven't done particularly well.
Yeah.
But I think what you did well is you picked some single game weekers, which is a brave thing to do, but it's paid off for at least a couple of them.
Yeah.
And you avoided Crystal Palace altogether, which at the moment looks like a bit of a masterstroke. So I'll read your team out for those on audio, and then you can talk us through the selections. So you had Raya and Saliba, both for the clean sheet. I should note we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, so we haven't seen the Man City or Arsenal second games. Guardiola with a clean sheet as well, and Bradley with a clean sheet and a yellow card. So full house in the back line. The midfield was Bowen, a 9-pointer. And again, selecting Bowen on a free hit, lots of people would have gone full doublers, but that was a really nice selection. De Bruyne, who had a big chance and created a big chance, really should have had more. Yep. Salah missed 3 big chances. And Saka was involved in at least a few big chances. And Luis Diaz against Leicester. So I look at that midfield, and whilst you got points for Bowen, you could have been looking at 30, 40 points there.
Tell me about it.
And then, the front two was actually really nice as well. So you went for Ollie Watkins when everyone else wrote him off as an asset. Rather than having an Isak or a Mateta, you went for Watkins, who looked absolutely fantastic against Newcastle, and then a Marmoush 2-pointer. So that puts you on 57 points. And I know on a free hit, you hope to have a massive green arrow, but I think you've done really well with some of the selections there.
Yeah, it's been decent so far. The big sort of disappointment was Luis Diaz, who put in a man of the match performance as far as the underlying sort of data in the game was concerned, but didn't quite manage to turn that into points. I think he returned something out of like 5 of the last 6 game weeks or something. So yeah, a bit annoying. It was between him and Rodgers towards the end. But the key thing about the free hit, as you've sort of already noted, was no Palace. So my thinking was that they'd have played 3 games, 4 games in short order, eyes on the FA Cup. That's kind of all they're going to be looking at. And I just kind of felt like that was a real kind of opportunity to attack the template, as it were. people are going to be saddled with your Munoz, your Sars, and your Matetas. And I thought, well, I've got an opportunity here to go against that with Watkins just worked. I'm going to probably say I went with Bowen, but you could say I was with KDB or Diaz against Sar, which has sort of worked. And then, Bradley versus Munoz, they're equal, aren't they?
Yeah.
But Matt Palace getting a man sent off and not conceding was very, very close, wasn't it?
I think I just genuinely think it's a really well selected free hit that I think you're unlucky to not get even more points with it, especially as you had Saka cap.
Yeah, story of my season, I'm afraid, Ross. It's always been the case.
But you're still at 150k, and whenever I check in with your team, and I do every few weeks check in with you and Pricey to see how you're getting on, I do often feel like you've been quite unlucky.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ran those FPL optimized graphs to see what your season's looking like, but I'd imagine quite a lot of negative variance, we'll call it.
Pretty much. It's basically been... I'm thinking, with that Palmer versus Southampton or something like that, where he missed a penalty. It's always been the case that whenever the chalk captain or the template captain hasn't gone well, and I've had the chance to really push an advantage, that's just not happened.
Yeah,
and that's kind of happened this week as well, where you had Saka, with the highest expected goal involvement for any player this week, missed a 1-on-1, could have had a couple of assists. Marmoush had blanked, and I was thinking, I'm quids here, and I've predicted that he's probably going to start against Ipswich, and it's just not happened. And that's just been what's happened this season a lot of the time.
I saw a tweet, and I mean, it's obvious now that I've seen the tweet, but Saka was the only player in the starting 11 not to return for Arsenal.
Yeah.
Because obviously the full defence got the full house, and then all of the attackers got a return. Just ridiculous. And this is the thing with FPL. I think the quicker that you realise that there is a massive amount of luck involved in it, I think that the better you get on, definitely, at least emotionally, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, very nice free hit. And obviously, like I say, you've still got lots of players left to play. So it should be a decent green arrow, you'd hope. And at the very least, it's not been... I've seen some free hits which are looking a lot worse if they didn't have the likes of Bowen and Watkins.
Yeah, in a lot of trouble, aren't they? A lot of them,
exactly. Cool. So I'm on the bench boost this week. Again, recording this on Tuesday afternoon. So lots of players left to play. But I had Raya, Saliba, Gvardiol and Munoz. So again, a full house in the back line, which is nice. It does often feel like some weeks your defenders go absolutely crazy and then some weeks they don't. On the bench, Bradley got a 5-pointer and Konsa has 2 with obviously the second game left to play. So not too bad there in the defence. Midfield, Rodgers gets an assist. Sarr just continues to really be disappointing. Salah, I didn't really want him to return anyway because he was over 100%. And then Bowen 9-pointer. So I also had Bowen this week. I had the choice between Bowen, KDB and Mbeumo. I was very close my deadline stream to going in Mbeumo, but I just thought, I think I'm going to buy Mbeumo in 35 anyway.
Yep.
I should probably front load the Bowen transfer. He's got the better fixture this week. And so Mbeumo scored and I was gutted. And then it was a half time. There was nothing from Bowen and I was just so sad. And then Bowen scored and I was elated. And then Mbeumo has to go and get another goal and assist. Yeah. So I can't complain with the Bowen 9 points. That's great, especially as West Ham were pretty rubbish. But I'd love that Mbeumo 18-pointer. Saka blanked, but again, he was over 100%, so I kind of wanted that. And then Mateta and Marmoush both blanking. In terms of my bench boost, I'd put out a realistic bench, which was Areola, Isak, Bradley, Konsa. It's currently on 12 points with Konsa's second game left to play. I'd be happy if he just got a 13-point bench boost at the moment, considering some of the other benches we've seen.
I got 4.
Exactly.
So I think
with 2 missed penalties.
You're already absolutely smashing what I got. Yes, 2 missed penalties. Let's never talk about Asensio again. I've got my team back, and we'll see it at the end. I saw my team. I saw Asensio in there. I was like, oh,
don't look at him.
Maybe I want to sell him this week, just out of spite. And take him on and say, or sell him, buy him back, and sell him again, just for satisfaction.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you at all. But I don't expect anything from Konsa. But the thing is, like, lots of people had similar bench to me, but they had Burn instead of Bradley.
Yeah.
And there's a 7-point swing between Burn and Bradley.
I know.
I mean, I saw Adam on who got the assist. That's you.
Above average.
On above average. He had 3 players with negative score.
Yep.
He had João Pedro, Estepinian and Burn. So his bench boost is like -5 or 6.
Oh, it's hilarious.
So the bench boost has been a disaster this season. I think it will call into question if we do just go for it. Not necessarily a game week 1 bench boost, but just an early part of the season bench boost and just get it done. But I think it's been different this season because we haven't had those huge doubles, where you've got like 10 teams doubling and you can get a doubling bench. Like even our biggest double this season is 4 teams doubling. So it essentially isn't a single game week. So let's see what the Masters predict with James from Planet FPL and Ben Krellin. And if they predict again small doubles, which we should be the case because the FA Cup quarters don't cause the blanks and doubles, then maybe we do just play it early season.
That's the thing. We don't have the chaos anymore. We don't have kind of 6, 7 extra added fixtures. This is kind of the most you're going to get with the 3 extra games. And maybe it does mean that bench boost becomes a lot less fixed in one particular part of the season. Although there is that added excitement, isn't it, of having like chip season and things. But we've got to adjust to what the changes are. And the fixture changes do mean that maybe we need to change our methodology when it comes to playing our chips.
Absolutely. So your goal for the end of the season, top 100k?
Top 100k.
And how many points roughly are you?
I think about 20 points-ish, something like that. So I do have a lot to chase. And I suppose that kind of incentivizes me for the rest of the year. It's just the case of whether next week, when everyone's free hitting, as we'll get onto in just a second, I'm able to, I think, probably just tread water effectively and then take it from there.
So I'm 20 points off top 10k. I don't even necessarily think that is my target. I know top 10k traditionally, and it looks nice on your rank history to have a 4-digit rank. I understand that, but I just think to get to that point, you have to be very lucky. If I have a lucky into the season, I'll get there. If I don't, then I won't. I think in terms of decisions left to make this season, other than free hit, you've only got a few transfers there. Yeah. It's minimal. So I just need to get lucky, essentially. And maybe just differentiating a couple of positions on the free hit. Hopefully I'll get a green arrow next week. But yeah, 20k overall rank, 20 points off top 10k. I'd be happy finishing the season roughly where I am. Absolutely. Cool. So this week, because we're obviously recording this on Tuesday for a Wednesday upload, and also just because a lot of the teams that we'd want to talk about from 33 don't even have a fixture in 34, we're looking ahead a little bit more rather than reviewing the previous week. And we're just going to go through some team data, the best defenders, midfielders, and forwards for Gameweek 34, and then some more of the usual stuff like the differential game. And Tom will keep bringing us back as well, which will be helpful to players to buy as well. Because like I said, I am fixated on free hit and lots of you are. But for those of you that aren't, you also need to know whether these are players that are worth buying in the long term. So the first thing you're going to see on your screen is the defensive data across the last 10 game weeks for all of the teams. I'm now going to do something very monotonous and read that out for those that are on audio. So this is over the last 10 game weeks sorted by XGC, with the best teams first going down to the weakest defenses. So Arsenal are the best defense in the league, by the way, at 0.69 XGC over the last 10 per 90, which is silly data.
Yeah, we've been like that all year, really.
And last season.
Very, very solid, very dependable. Just kind of a few lapses here and there, which have been a bit of a chink in our armour, but otherwise, yeah, very, very solid all year. Absolutely.
And obviously you can't pick them this week, but definitely Arsenal are the defence of the season by some distance. Liverpool in second, they are the best team that you can target with 0.82 XG. So Liverpool and Arsenal, the only two teams below 1 XGC. We've then got City third, Chelsea fourth, so keep an eye on Chelsea, and then Everton fifth. So obviously Chelsea and Everton going against each other. Brentford sixth, Palace seventh, Wolves in eighth, West Ham ninth, and Fulham 10th. So that makes up your top 10. And you might be thinking there are some teams that you would expect to see higher up that aren't. They're quite low down. So then Bournemouth 11th, Brighton 12th, Manchester United 13th. So not as bad as some people are suggesting. Aston Villa 14th, Newcastle 15th. And seeing Villa and Newcastle that low down, I mean, they've had some difficult games in there, but these are two defences that a lot of us are invested in. Then it's Nottingham Forest in 16th, which we're going to discuss. Obviously, Spurs in 17th. They're having an absolute stinker of a season. And then it's the three promoted teams, Ipswich, Southampton, and Leicester. So I'll let you go first. In terms of that table, are there any teams that stand out good or bad that you'd like to talk about, especially in relation to 34?
So 34 Fulham, obviously you've got the Southampton game, and yeah, I suppose there's the idea that throughout the course of the season they're third for expected goals conceded. So they're doing really, really well defensively. It's just over the last few weeks, it doesn't seem to have kind of paid off. I think they're in the running for some Europe, but it's not really. I don't know. They've hit a bit of a fallow period. Them and Bournemouth kind of both together they're sat together here as well. Seem to have hit a bit of a bump in the road. Now, a lot of people are looking at Sessegnon. A lot of people are looking at Robinson. I think something like this may be kind of worth bearing in mind, although it's Southampton, Ross. I mean, with all due respect to your Saints listeners, something about them just makes you think, you've got to target them at least a little bit. And it feels like with Fulham, having a Robinson or having a Sessegnon does feel like kind of the way to go if you look at it from an attacking angle rather than defensive one. But Leno in goal could be a decent shout. Yeah,
as you say, important to contextualise, they are third this season for XGC, Fulham. So they're low down on this list. They're in 10th, I think. But also their fixtures over that period have been really tough. And I'm not going to contextualise every team here, but before looking at data, look at the fixtures that they've had. Because I'll see some people will be like, this team are like Crystal Palace, their away form is amazing over the last 8. And it was, but then you look to the teams they've played and there's no wonder that the away form was that good. So do contextualise. And I do think Fulham are a very decent defence. Chelsea being up in 4th stands out to me because they are a team that are constantly just battered by the FPL community in terms of we don't trust them, don't go for Sanchez, don't go for Cucurella. They're playing against an Everton team that are pretty toothless a lot of the time. And not only are they 4th for XGC across the last 10, but they're also 3rd for XGC across the season at home. So they're really good at home.
Yep.
Everton are slightly weaker away in terms of attacking data, and they're 4th across the last 10. So decent in form, decent at home, just a solid defence. They don't concede that many chances. I think if not for Sanchez just not having an absolute howl on a few occasions this season, they'd probably have a few more clean sheets.
Yeah, it feels a bit like Man City with Edison, where every now and again, one would just go in, and Edison did get tarnished with this brush of being a bit of a calamity, when actually it wasn't for the majority of the season. There were always times where he'd just go on a run of clean sheets, and it's been that way with Chelsea as well. That just 1 or 2 lapses in judgment, concentration have led to them conceding versus what the data says. On a free hit, again, someone like Cucurella, I think, probably be standing out. I'm not sure he'd be going for like a Sanchez or maybe a Reece James for nostalgia's sake. Maybe we could go for him.
Yeah, like one of them. I'm not sitting here and saying like double up on the Chelsea defense here, but like if you're like, I don't like any of the goalkeepers, I guess you could go Sanchez. If you're sat there thinking, I've got a spare defender slot and I'd like someone that's good for baseline bonus, good for attacking threat, Cucurella could be your guy, but don't write Chelsea just because there's this narrative going out there that they're a bad defense. That the data doesn't seem to support that.
Agreed.
I think Wolves stand out here as being basically since Vitor Pereira's taken over, they've been solidly in the top 10 for defensive data. They've not really dropped off of that. They've not had any true howler performances. They just seem a lot more solid. 4 clean sheets in 10 weeks as well. They could have had a couple more. I think they're just an okay defence under Vitor Pereira.
They are, and with a very, very enticing Leicester game up next with a couple of, one particular player who's good for attacking. Agbadou coming in the December transfer window seems to have really helped them out a lot as well, shore things up, who can play the ball, progress the ball as well. And I think that he and Pereira, I think, has taken a very sort of back to basics approach by the sounds of it in terms of how Wolves are set up. Seems to have paid dividends for them, really.
Yep, I would agree with that, but don't just look at Aitner and say, oh, he's got attacking threats. I have it. Like, there's actually a reasonable chance for a clean sheet here for sure. I guess in terms of bad defensive data that stands out here, obviously you're not going to be going for the likes of Aston Villa. Obviously don't have a fixture. United, no one wants them anyway. Newcastle quite low down. Again, they've had tricky fixtures in that time. My free hit draft, and I'm going to show you that later, a little bit of a spoiler, I have double Newcastle defence. And I'm looking at this and thinking, do I really want that when they're such a good attacking outfit and the defensive data's not been fantastic? It's just there's so many good defenders to choose from. And I keep coming back to a bit what you said, well, it's Ipswich.
Yeah.
So like you do need to look at data, but also look at the fixture that they've got. And I do still think there's a chance for a clean sheet. Would this worry you? Would this put you off Newcastle defence?
In a 1 week scenario, no. I've got two Newcastle. I've got Livramento, I think it's Newcastle defence, and I'm more than happy to play with it just because of the quality of the opposition. That's the main thing that I'm putting it as. Yeah, it's a bit worrying, and I think kind of this is the last sort of big good game for Newcastle. So after you will get your teams back after free hitting. You may be thinking, maybe this is the time to move on my Livramento, my Shah, my Burn. But at the moment, I think that it's probably worth going with just because of the quality of the opposition here.
Absolutely. And then, again, one of the teams that stand out here is Nottingham Forest. So the only teams that are worse defensively than Nottingham Forest over the last 10 game weeks is Spurs, Ipswich, Southampton and Leicester. And we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. Last night, Forest got pretty battered by Spurs in terms of chance creation. And there is the narrative, of course, that I'm hearing that this is what Nottingham Forest wanted in that game. They played a low block and they invited Spurs on. That is exactly what Nottingham Forest do. They are a team that will sit back and invite pressure. But they did that so well last season that they were 4th for XGC last season, and up to the midpoint of this season, they were 3rd for XGC.
Yeah.
So they've always been a team that will invite opponents onto them, but they do that and normally still don't give up high quality chances. In the last 10, they've been playing the exact same way, but they're not seemingly able to stop the opposition from creating those high quality chances. They're at 1.55 XGC per 90, which is pretty high. Would you be tempted to have Forest defenders on the free hit, or does this put you off, or are you more interested in their historical long data? Like, what do you think here with Nottingham Forest?
I'd be probably looking elsewhere than Forest. So losing Aina, I think, was a big one for them, and they've chopped and changed systems a couple of times between 3 at the back and 4 at the back since then. They were settled before that, and I think that maybe has precipitated what we've seen. With that Brentford game, with Forest, crucially, it comes after the FA Cup, right? It's the midweek one. So you're kind of going into owning a Forest asset blind, not knowing what could happen that week during the weekend. So for me, I think Forest is a team that I put a big asterisk against in terms of buying any players on their free hit. I've got Milenkovic. I've got to play Milenkovic because there's no point in moving him on. So I'm not free hitting. But if you are free hitting, I think it's just a case of thinking, you know what, actually I'll leave it. And Brentford are looking a lot better. So it's definitely not a team that I'd be looking at for free hit.
Yeah, I think Brentford have a 12-day break between 33 and 34, whereas Forest not only, I think, would have had an 11-day break, but then in the middle of it, they've got that semi-final. So as you say, not only could players pick up knocks and then they could be an issue, but also there's just going to be some level of fatigue. And I would say maybe rotation, but they just can't afford to rotate in the league. So I think if everyone gets through that fine, you will see their strongest 11. I don't think you have to worry about that necessarily, but there is always the risk there with a little bit of fatigue. Any other teams that stand out there in terms of defensive data that are worth discussing?
At the moment, I was surprised to see where West Ham are, actually. I think that, again, it's maybe linked to Chelsea. The narrative of them being a bit defensively weak has been one of those things. Maybe it's a kind of a hallmark of them. Many podcasters and things have dubbed it being the longest preseason history under Graham Potter. I think that's definitely the case that we're seeing. But, I mean, they are kind of defensively okay. Brighton West Ham, I think, this weekend screams a 2-2, something like that. It's got that sort of unpredictability about it. But I was surprised when you sent this through to me earlier to see where West Ham were. I didn't expect them to see them around sort of the Forest Tottenham mark.
Yeah, absolutely. You say 2-2 written all over it. I think Areola 11 points are written all over it when no one actually has him in their starting 11 after he let us down on the bench boost this week. But obviously if you're on YouTube, you can obviously pause that, take a look through it. But so that's the team defensive data. So let's then go on to discussing the defenders that you might want. So on your screen, I've got 12 selected defenders. I've just selected them in terms of they're either good buys or good for this week or just players you might want to have. And I've ordered them by XGI per 90 over the last 10 game weeks again. The reason I'm choosing 10, it is an arbitrary number, but it's big enough that it's not a tiny sample size, but it's also picking up on some recent trends. So I've gone for 10 game weeks and we'll keep that consistent across the podcast. So ordering this by XGI, in first is Sessegnon with 0.58 XGI per 90 since coming in, which is remarkable. He's playing as a right winger. We've then got 8 Nuri at 0.28. Livramento, Williams, and Trent make up the top 5, all with pretty good data. Cucurella in 6th, Fabian Schär in 7th. So Livramento with better data than Fabian Schär. Robinson in 8th. And then even with Robinson, we're looking at 0.09 XGI per 90 here. It's not outstanding numbers. Estepinian, Van Dijk, Trippier, and Kirkes. So those are the 12 defenders that I've selected for discussion. Sessegnon. Talk to me what you think. So obviously, as someone that's not on a free hit, probably not someone you're looking at due to the minutes risk, or do you think he's still maybe worth the upside of attacking it?
He would have been a stick-on for me if Wilson wasn't back on the bench and D came on for him. The BBC live feed at the time, I think he took a knock in the game and then went off injured a few minutes later, and the substitution feed was like, he took a bit of a knock. So need to see what happens there. But I think he does worry me, Ross, a little bit, Sessegnon, unfortunately. Like, he was a stick-on for me in terms of coming in, but that dual threat of Wilson coming back and also the potential injury have meant that probably is not going to happen. It's very alluring, isn't it, given the underlying data? It's always exciting to have a proper out-of-position defender cut price, redolent of Lord Lundstram or something like that. John Lundstram back in the day for older players. But I think at the moment it's just too worrying. See what Silver says. Very alluring for 1 week. Why not? Same as kind of buying Bradley last week on a free hit when Trevor was kind of on his way back, where you might get one more game out of him. See what Silver says. Very interesting, but there's a fair but attached to buying him.
I think because he's a defender, you need him to make it to 60, which is the concern. That if he doesn't, then you might get an attacking return, but you need the 60th minute to get the clean sheet. I actually think it's a positive that he might come off early. We've seen with Bradley, with Trent in the past, that banking the clean sheet. I remember 2 or 3 seasons ago when Castagna was at Leicester, I owned Castagna for a little spell where he kept coming off around the 65th minute and kept banking me clean sheets. And it can be a positive thing, but you need him to make it to 60. Good point on Harry Wilson being back. And I mean, Adama Traore sat there. He's not fantastic. We know that. And he's a bit inconsistent. But that is 2 natural right wingers that you've got, and they're playing a left back there instead. So as good as Sessegnon's been, there is that concern. But then when you look at the only defender that gets even close to him is 8 Nuri at 0.28 XGI per 90 and Sessegnon 0.58. It might be worth the upside. And especially as we said, a decent chance for a clean sheet. At the moment, he's in my draft. Okay. Another little spoiler there, but something seems a little bit uneasy. It just seems like it could be a little bit of a trap. Let us know in the comments whether you're tempted by Sessegnon, a player that I think everyone will probably have. I don't know if you have him in your team, 8 Nuri.
I don't have him in my team. He would be on the free hit team. I just put him in and forget about it, to be honest. There's the most goal involvements this year for a defender with 10. I think it's Mignolet's second with 8. Sorry. Really, the fixture and the player, both of them together, and the form of the team as well, just mean that he's such an obvious signing and such an obvious pick to put in that defence, really. I can't say much more about the Wolves defence other than him. I mean, Jose Sarr, who's the goalkeeper I had, went down the tunnel injured in the warm-up. I can't really put my mind to any other, maybe like an Agbadou for your bench.
Yeah, you could go Semedo or Agbadou, but I just think at that point, you're either really just trying to get lucky and just going, maybe they'll get a goal and 8 Nuri won't, or you're doubling up. And I think there are other defenders that I'd want to maybe go with alongside 8 Nuri.
Yeah, we're trying to find some money if you're going.
I guess. Yeah, absolutely. The next question then is around the Newcastle defenders. So I've included in this list here Livramento, Fabian Schär, Trippier. The only reason Dan Burn's not in there is he's probably going to be the one that scores now, but traditionally not really shown as much attacking threat in terms of goals or assists. Livramento, if I'm watching the games eye test wise, he's been sensational. And I haven't owned Livramento, and I've counted myself very lucky every week that I watch him recently that he hasn't massively outscored Dan Burn, because he probably deserves to have. And so when I looked into the data, I was pleased to see that the eye test and the data match, because they don't always do that. He's the best for baseline bonus out of the three, even higher than Trippier this season, which is quite incredible. 0.18 XGI. Fabian Schär, who's been an absolute goal machine in the last couple of weeks, almost scored from the halfway line. He's down at 0.1. And Kieran Trippier's at 0.06. He's not had, I think he's had like one game this season where he's created more than one big shot. He's not really like, it's not the Kieran Trippier of old.
No, definitely.
But with Trippier, you've got set pieces. With Fabian Schär, you've got good assist threat because of his passing range and good goal threat. Where would you lean at the moment? Let's say on a free hit first, if you were choosing for a one-off week, Livramento, Schär, Trippier. I
think it would be Schär. Because I think with this, you want to spike variance, as they say. So get that one sort of that one explosion from a player. Livramento, a lot of his threat is assists and things like that. Whereas with a Schär, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, was it the first player ever to hit the bar from the halfway line or from his own half Schär? So has an eye for goal, as he always classically had one. I think that I'd shove him in and just hope that you get your 15-pointer, your fable 15 points from Schär from a goal. Livramento, very good to the eye. I agree with that completely. In terms of what we're looking for from FPL, though, a lot of the time the end ball, the end product isn't quite there with Livramento. You're looking at maybe a 9-pointer, 10-pointer being the sin, but with Schär, that you could get a little bit more from a goal, and that's where I'd go. Same probably applies to Trippier with Livramento. I like both. I own Livramento because he made sense to buy a little while ago. But if I was free in this week, straight into Schär, I think.
And is the Trippier stuff is just nostalgia, I think, a little bit, isn't it? Knowing what he can do.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, he hasn't got the set piece monopoly anymore, and that is shared out a little bit as far as I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Not every set piece.
Exactly. Whereas before he used to have it all, and he hasn't got the engine anymore. Because much like me, used to have the engine to stay up at 2 a.m. editing podcasts. Now I'm in bed by 12.
Absolutely, I like that comparison. Yeah, I've noticed that Trippier, he's not playing as like a right centre back as such, but it's often Livramento that's the one going up and down. But sadly, I think the reason that Livramento's end product is sometimes lacking is I think it takes time to adjust to being on the left. Yeah. Because he's having to cut in on his right or cross with his left foot. But I think next season, I would be very surprised if it's not Livramento and Hall. And I think at that stage, we're looking at two very, very good FPL options there. Any love for Trent?
I think it's just a tiny bit too risky. Let's see what Slot says. But I just probably think it's just that tad too far out the comfort zone this week. You could really go big with it. You could end up with, I don't know, it's one of those players that I was looking at this week as a potential, because I had the money to kind of just about throw him in, but I thought, well, Bradley probably will start. And you probably may well see Bradley again. It depends how close to fitness Trent is. Looked absolutely fine. Looked pretty ripped, to be honest. So maybe he'll be all right. One that, fortune could favour the brave, really, but I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think anyone would be surprised to see him on the bench again, just one more time before he comes back into the team.
There's a lot of, I think it's kind of narrative bias, let's call it, but it's like Liverpool's title-winning game at Anfield against Spurs. Trent's a big game player, was brilliant off the bench. He can absolutely get 60 to 70 minutes. I agree with all of that, but I think there's firstly risk associated with, does he start? If Bradley's the future, which they hope, and if Trent is off, there's no guarantee Trent starts. And even if he does start, 60 minutes is probably what you're looking at, and then you're taking a real risk that Slot loves. And I mean, I've never seen a manager love a pre-60 sub like Arne Slot. And it's not like 50, it's 59. He loves a 58 to 59 minute sub. And I think you take a massive risk with any Liverpool player, especially when they're a bit of a rotation risk that they come off then. So yeah, I mean, across the last 10, his data's been 0.16 XGI. I wouldn't buy in too much that shows that he's probably not worth it, because we know he's quality, and sometimes you have to contextualize that. But I just don't know if the upside is high enough to warrant the risk. But again, if you buy into the narrative of this being a huge game, assuming, by the way, that Arsenal beat Palace, then this could be the title-winning game. And maybe for the love of the game, he gives Trent that game. I don't think I'm going to go there personally, though. I think if I was going for a Liverpool defender, as much as he's not shown much attacking threat this year, I'd probably go Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, you get the minutes, don't you, really? Spurs have been pretty good in terms of on the attacking side. Woeful defensively, but good on the attacking side. So something to bear in mind if you're going for Liverpool defensively is that clean sheet isn't as guaranteed as you think it is. Absolutely. Would there be any love for Cucurella for you, do you think, on a free hit? Yeah, I think so. I think we've spoken about Chelsea's defensive solidity, and Everton, by contrast, they started off kind of scoring a lot of low XG chances and all that sort of jazz. And recently they've sort of reverted to being a little bit more toothless, and so have Chelsea. And I feel like that game could be a bit of a dull one. You never know. But Cucurella has been basically been kind of taking a bit of a midfield / attack midfielder position when they've got the ball. You can't miss it when he's playing, can you? Sort of the hair swooshing around. It's awesome.
I have that when I play football. Actually,
yeah, I can imagine. you in that lovely wig that you've got. Is it a mop anyway? Anyway, Cucurella, awesome. I think he'd definitely be the Chelsea defender that you'd pick.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I think that the data, it's never great data for defenders. And if it is something like Sessegnon, something like that, it really sticks out like a sore thumb. With defenders, over 0.1 is absolutely fine. And Cucurella, absolutely fine for your free hit.
Yeah, good for baseline bonus as well. So if they keep a clean sheet. So last season at Stamford Bridge, Chelsea beat Everton 6-0. Cucurella got an assist and a clean sheet. This season at Goodison Park, it was 0-0. So that's back-to-back clean sheets against Everton. Everton could score, absolutely. And they're not a terrible attack that some people suggest. Like against Forest, they put 1.3 XG. I think this week they had around 1 XG. They create chances, but I would be surprised if Chelsea concede more than 1 in this game. And I think a clean sheet's definitely possible. Don't write off again the Chelsea defence just because there's this narrative that they're horrible. I think the only other maybe team that are being slightly overlooked, and I say this as a Man United fan, are probably Bournemouth in terms of not only buys, but free hit as well. Kirkes, Howson, they're probably great shouts.
They are. I think they're probably more to buy, though. I don't know whether they're kind of quite crying out. See what team, I don't know what team you think United are going to field. That's probably something to bear in mind.
Yep.
But yeah, Kirkes, the underlying data's not that great. Knows how to hit across. Has got a couple of assists this year for that sort of thing. Good run in and potential double in 36 for him. I mean, he's a good buy if you're not on free hit. Outside of free hit, though, I don't know whether he slightly gets crowded out by the other options which are out there. But a good attacking fullback who I think probably won't be at Bournemouth next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think Liverpool, one of the teams that were eyeing him up. But yeah, I was listening again to Above Average on the way here, which is a bit of a tradition for me. So if you're not listening to Above Average, definitely check them out. But I was listening to their sort of podcast on the way here, and Baker kept saying, I like Kirkes. And Adam was like, yeah, but he's just not making it ahead of some of these other options. Like once you put Aït-Nouri in, once you put one Newcastle defender in, and then you've got Sessegnon, Trent, Cucurella, double up on the Fulham, double up. It's just, where does he fit in there? Yeah. So as much as I like Kirkes, and if you really are a United hater, and there are a lot of people out there, then maybe you go for him. But I think I would be slightly more interested in the attackers against Manchester United at the moment.
Certainly.
Cool. Anyone else you think we need to speak about? Especially in terms of buys this week, if you were to order or suggest a few that you like in terms of not only for this week, but for the final few game weeks?
I think you're probably you're fishing in a very different pool. So you're looking at Kirkes for sure. Maybe one of the Brentford defenders you'd be looking at as well, potentially. So Collins, I think, is probably the most involved in terms of, I remember at the start of the year, they kind of kept scoring within like 20 seconds. Collins got one of those, and he's the most sort of attacking adept, so decent on the bonus. But I mean, you're fishing in such a small pit. It's such a small pond always when you're on free hit. And these are a really good sort of list of the defenders you're probably going to be looking at overall. I don't know, Ross.
Everton had like, is it Ipswich and Leicester or Ipswich?
Yeah, they've got Ipswich and Southampton. Is it the final game in Goodison Southampton, isn't it?
Yeah, so they've got Chelsea this week, and we just said that could be low scoring. If you're not going with a Cole Palmer, then I don't hate it. Then it's Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton. Fulham aren't the best attack. And then Ipswich and Southampton at home. Final game at Goodison. I don't hate the idea of going and getting an Everton, but obviously Tarkowski did go off injured, didn't he?
That's literally but. So I had written down here Everton. I was starting to write, Everton's a really good one to pick out. And then I saw, Tarkowski. I heard on Garden Football Weekly, Tarkowski went off with a hamstring injury. Well, I mean, there's your answer. All due respect to Michael Keane. I don't know whether that's kind of quite a like-for-like replacement. So, Everton for me, I don't think I want to go there defensively. Attacking-wise, sure, next week, but not this week.
Okay, absolutely. We'll discuss Everton when we move on to Palmer, I guess, because I think there's a chance that they don't risk Keane and maybe O'Brien comes across or something, but then you've got a weak right-back spot probably there. So, probably not the best team to invest in until we get an update there. Cool. Right. So, and if you want to see which 3 I've gone from my free hit, again, I'll show my free hit at the end of the podcast. Midfielders. Again, midfielders sorted by non-penalty XGI per 90 over the last 10. On your screen, you can see the 14 selected midfielders that I've gone for. I found it difficult to sort of narrow this down. So there are definitely players that are missing. Top 2 midfielders for non-pen XGI per 90 that have a fixture in 34 are Barnes and Murphy over the last 10. So Barnes at 0.66, Murphy at 0.57. So a triple up of Barnes, Murphy, Isak, if they get the minutes, looks great. You've got Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota as 3 and 4. So conceivably, Barnes, Murphy, Diaz, Jota would be a solid midfield 4 according to the data. You've then got 3 penalty takers that are just so talismanic in Palmer, Salah, and Burma in 5, 6, 7. around 0.5 XG, non-penalty XGI for the three of them, which is lower than you would expect for the three, but also not terrible underlying data. We then drop a little bit to Cliver in 8th, Fernandez in 9th, Matoma 10th, Bowen 11th, Manetzi 12th, Iwobi 13th, and Gibbs White 14th. Those are the 14 midfielders that I've selected. I'll go with Barnes Murphy first. So you own Murphy, right?
do.
And you're, again, not on a free hit for 34. Am I overthinking the minute stuff? Have they just been playing so well that they'll just continue to start? Or do you think there is a small chance that Gordon comes in for one of them?
There is a small chance. There never isn't a small chance. I do think that, the Villa blip aside, I think they must have been pretty tired after playing a few games in succession. They've got a bit of a break now, haven't they? I wouldn't be surprised to see Barnes and Murphy continue on. Murphy is a 60-minute man, isn't he? I mean, we kind of get always kind of 63rd, 64th minute, his number comes up. But he's just been so productive since Christmas, effectively, Murphy. And Barnes, six returns in his last 6, got the assist against Villa, didn't he? I think that you probably would look at, I think you're probably going to have to go for Barnes just because the field, as it were, of people who aren't free hitting are going to have Murphy as the hangover from the previous double. But either one is probably a decent, well, probably should be in your free hit. Yeah. If Gordon had been fit and had been firing, I think it would be no question. With these two, I think at the moment, just because of how Newcastle have performed, aside from Villa, you look at kind of the data over longer term or the performance over longer term and think, actually, there's probably no reason for Gordon to come in quite yet. But yeah, it could happen. And I'm sure it'll be me with Murphy who's going to get disappointed, that's for sure.
Well, Murphy started every game since Gameweek 13. So there's no indication that Murphy will be benched as such. He does get a nice early sub every now and again. And in fact, more often than not, he does. So he doesn't look like he's going to be benched. But then you can't bench Harvey Barnes right now.
No.
So I just don't see either of them being benched. There's no reason to, apart from, like you said, that one game in which case Villa just overrun them. The two of them should continue to start. Barnes got an assist in that game anyway.
Yeah.
Murphy still looked okay. It was just a game where they just lost. So I don't see Gordon starting. But then when it comes to who gets the early sub, it does look more likely to be Murphy.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
who is to say if Murphy has a good game that Barnes isn't the one that comes off? Because Barnes and Murphy are both, Barnes and Gordon, I should say, are both better on the left.
Yeah.
Murphy's the only natural right winger.
Yeah.
So if Murphy's having a decent game and looks fit, I don't see any reason why Murphy doesn't stay on. So I just think with Barnes and Murphy, both of them have let's say a 5 to 10% chance of getting benched. And then each of them have a 20 to 30% chance of getting subbed in the 60th. When you then look at their expected minutes, it is quite low. Then they're not on set pieces. Then they're not on penalties. At the moment, I've got neither in my free hit draft, but that feels awful. And then again, it probably then means I'm doubling up on the Newcastle defense. And do I really want to do that? There are just, I can't, I wouldn't forgive myself if I pick a Barnes or Murphy, they come off in the 58th, and then I don't go for instead a 90-minute Palmer, Mbermo, Cliver. And I know that's so boring, but it's kind of the way that I tend to play.
I think as statistically driven managers, the most underlying things, I'm sure you've heard from other guests, is minutes. And in the situation where you've basically got a free punt of this sort of thing, a free taster beer before you drink that, before you buy the whole pint, it probably makes the most sense to go with what you know. And the safest way of playing can sometimes pay dividends when it comes to minutes. As you said, you can buy a player who's very exciting, but if they're hooked in the 45th minute or in the 58th minute, something they're not that exciting, especially when the player that you knew previously was going to play your 90. Yeah, I'd probably go safe there. Double Newcastle defence, though, it's Leicester. Lads, it's Leicester. I think they're probably going to be okay. I say that, and Vardy, of course, scores.
Ipswich for Newcastle.
Sorry.
Yes. But still.
Yeah, that'd be very impressive.
Delap will score.
Delap scores.
Delap will score. I don't know if you've actually got an update on Delap, because he's not been starting all the games. And that would be very important to me, deciding on the Newcastle defenders. So that's maybe something we need to look out for in the press conferences. Because, Delap starts, less keen. Delap doesn't start, I'm slightly more keen on them. I can imagine that by the deadline, Barnes will make his way in. I just struggle taking out 90-minute penalty takers is all I'll say. But I don't advise that you necessarily play the game the same way as me. 2 more minutes risks and 2 more players that aren't on set pieces and aren't on penalties. Diaz, Jota. Diaz has been in really good form. You obviously had him on your free hit. Disappointing not to get anything, but another game where he's accumulating chances. Do you think Diaz is the standout in comparison to Jota?
I think so. He's also played 90, didn't he, last game?
Yeah, he's got a lot of 90 minutes. He doesn't only start a lot, but he also tends to stay on the pitch.
Yeah, he starts as the 9. He starts kind of as the 9, and then Gakpo was on the left, and I think they kind of swapped it all around when Jota came on. Yeah. So Diaz, I think, is kind of doing that job. I think he and Salah have been the two who have been performing, and the other spot has been sort of up for grabs, as it were. So Diaz has got the minutes. Jota has got the just off the bench, and if he does kind of happen to start the Spurs game, then hey, you could be quids in. I've got good memories of owning Jota on free hit and just kind of gambling on it and him happening to play and him happening to score because he does have a good record when it comes to finishing. Slightly prefer Diaz for the minutes, but I wouldn't kind of ever chide anyone for going for Jota, just thinking what could be. The only risk is, of course, that 30-minute appearance off the bench again. I didn't see the game because I was driving back, but I heard Gakpo was particularly quiet, and I think Liverpool were particularly quiet, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Jota maybe start and Diaz shifts to the left.
I think definitely Luis Diaz is first choice left winger. And I think Diogo Jota is first choice number 9. So I think in their best team, it's Diaz Jota. And this is the biggest game of the season for them now to just tie it up at Anfield against Spurs. So I do expect that to be the front two. But as I said, Slot loves a pre-60 sub. Now, could that be Diaz? Yes. There's no reason just because he's played 90 often in the past that he'll get 90 here. But Jota makes more sense to come off for Gakpo. You push Diaz into the 9, as we said, Gakpo goes out to the left. So I think with Jota, if he has a quiet game, misses a couple of chances, you could be looking at a 1-pointer.
Yeah.
Whereas Diaz, I'd be surprised if you get 1. You're probably getting 2 or 3 in that case. And I know that's not much better, but at least he's on the pitch. So Diaz, I think, is my preference right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get some sort of nod from Slot, or we just believe like a lot of the predictors have Jota in the 11. I think that is a place where you can differentiate, because it's not like Luis Diaz is on pens and corners and Jota's not.
Yeah.
They're both just open play goal threat and assist threat. And I think Jota in a given match could definitely match Luis Diaz. 2 players that are dividing a lot of opinion for Gameweek 34, especially for free hit, but also I guess if you've not got them or if you do have them, is Palmer and Mbeumo.
Yep.
So neither of them, I think, have standout fixtures on paper for Gameweek 34. Everton at home, they're a decent defence. Forest across the season have been quite good defensively. Start with Palmer. I can't believe how bad he's been in terms of FPL and output. So in the last 10 game weeks, he's obviously got 0 goals.
Yep.
But he's had a league top in 37 shots. Only 3.85 XG in that time. So there are a lot of pop shots. Maybe that shows
a lot of volume.
Yeah, maybe like a Semenyo-esque player where it shows. And by the way, over that time, Semenyo's still second with 31 shots. But maybe it shows that he's a bit desperate and that he's forcing it a little bit. But that is then still an underperformance of 3.85 XG. Cole Palmer is a player that we think is silky smooth, and we've seen his ability to finish near post, far post, top corner, bottom corner. What's going on?
I don't know. It feels like, do you remember that period when Rooney was at United in the kind of mid Rooney years at United, where he had that kind of 11-month spell where nothing would come off for him? I think it's a mixture of Palmer kind of being in that bit desperate. I've got memories of reading Athletic articles, Alan Shearer saying, just don't force it, is what I always advise strikers and midfielders to do. And it definitely feels like that with the shot data. And you've also got his teammates just seemingly being unable to kind of knit things together. So Jackson not being able to finish his dinner and relying on players like Correa to score. Yep. Sancho's been in a different form. Neto, obviously Neto the winner this week. But yeah, there's been a lot of time where you kind of expect Palmer as a talisman to be involved in the goals, and it's not quite happened. He's got a couple of assists in the last couple of weeks, not just this week. When it comes to free hit, he's going to be in my team because I'm not going to get rid of him because he's playing. In terms of free hit, though, part of me does wonder whether he, again, gets crowded out a tiny bit. And as you say, I suppose when we come to it later on, I've got the spoiler when it comes to your team. It does feel like there is a bit of a 50-50 between Palmer and Bumo for a lot of people, both 90-minute men. It's just that Bumo at the moment has that, I don't know, he's a proper minutes player, Bumo, and a bit of just something about it at the moment when it comes to them and the fixture that they've got against potentially a tired Forest, we shall see, would maybe make me think of Bumo.
Yeah.
But it's close. And I think that maybe you've got an opportunity on the other hand with Palmer, haven't you? Because people might not want to go there. Yeah,
I've just brought up a poll that I run a couple of hours before FPL Therapy, before we recorded. And I just said, will you own Cole Palmer for Gameweek 34? I said, it doesn't matter if you're on free hit or not, just whether he will be in your team. 41% yes, 59% no. So what that tells me is that Cole Palmer might be a genuine differential, because not only is that lower than obviously half, but I think the FPL community on Twitter, we still look at underlying data, we still look at historical data. So I think we are probably even kinder to Palmer than the general consensus will be. So I could see Palmer being quite lowly owned, which makes me want him more on the free hit. Okay. I can absolutely understand the argument that why would you own a player that has 0 goals? I think he hasn't scored a goal since January 14th or something. It was like that.
It's pretty ridiculous.
So why would you own him? And I get that fully. On the flip side, he's shown his quality, even at early parts this season. He's, I think, the 3rd top scoring player in the game, still, after such a poor last 10, 12 games, which just shows what he can do. And form, only does last so long. At some point, Palmer will not be in bad form. Whether that's this season, next season, in 3 seasons, unless he's just going to fall off the rest of his career, at some point he turns that around and he takes penalties. I also am a little bit, I don't like looking at previous games between teams. Like, I don't like that because it doesn't mean anything, right? Last season's game doesn't matter. But I did accidentally look at last season between obviously Chelsea and Everton at Stamford Bridge, and it was 6-0 and Palmer scored 4. So, and that was an Everton team at the time were also defending relatively well, right? I'm not thinking that Chelsea are going to win this game 6-0, but I just think Cole Palmer in any given game, regardless of what has happened across the last 10 to 12, has a higher ceiling than, I would argue, anyone in FPL. Like, not many players go out there and get 25 points on 2 occasions. So what I like to sometimes do with FPL is think, what would annoy me more? Would it annoy me more if I chose Palmer and he blanked? Or would it annoy me more if I went without Palmer and he pulled a 20-pointer out of the hat? That would annoy me more. I'd think, why did I try and get clever? So I don't want to put people off of omitting Palmer from their free hit, because I think it's a great way to differentiate, right? He's a player that's underperforming, he's very expensive, and Everton are largely a good defence. I just think knowing what Palmer can historically do, and even points this season we've seen, on top of the Tarkowski injury, that might be the little thing that just gives me that nudge.
Yeah, it's the opportunity cost, isn't it, really, of going without a Bumo to get a Palmer in. And I didn't see that poll, but if you think about the fact that the majority of the engaged community are probably going to be on free hit this week, plus the fact that people who aren't on free hit, most people would have sold this week, perhaps, if they're bench boosting or something like that. You are going to have a player who does have that really high ceiling with a team who is perhaps missing their defensive linchpin at a very low effective ownership. I mean, that does feel quite compelling, doesn't it? Add some penalties in, Ross, which I know you love, and suddenly, wow, it's irresistible. Bye.
This is the thing. Like, if you gave Palmer an extra, I don't know how many more penalties he's had last season, but it was like an extra 6 or 8 in comparison to where he's at now. Give him an extra 6 to 8 penalties. He's on like 250 points.
Yeah.
And we're saying he's had like an all-timer season. Like, he's not far off 300. He'd only be the second player ever alongside Salah to do that. So I don't know. You do need to take into account form and previous game weeks, but there is some level of just, if a player's good. Like Mbeumo, do you remember when we all sold and dropped Mbeumo because he'd had like 1 shot in 5 games?
Yeah,
and he got like back-to-back hauls.
Yeah.
These players are just good. So I don't know. Chelsea are clearly not at it. They're not playing for Enzo Maresca. I can understand why he'd go without, but at the moment he's currently in my free hit. I've basically told you my whole free hit at this point. On Brian Mbeumo, we spoke about the Forest-Brentford stuff. Brentford have a 12-game break. Forest are going to be probably a bit knackered, and Forest are now 15th or 16th for XGC. Would Mbeumo be a lock for you?
He's a buy for me. So
I should say he's one of probably the best buys, isn't he?
As a non-free hitter, with really easy fixture Man United as well coming up, Ross. I think that he's one of those players.
Not as I'm wearing the hoodie as well.
Worth buying in, especially because we're wearing the hoodie, Ross. But yes,
those fixtures 35-38.
Very decent run in for them, and just one of those players who I think everybody will own. This week on free hit, maybe there's a little bit of kind of toing and throwing about him, but especially because I free hit a week early, this is the week where I move on. The idea was that this is the week where I could move on those Palace players a week early, get a player like that a little bit early. So it's one of those players that, I don't love the fixture this week in terms of Brentford versus Forest. It does feel like, you've got those kind of contextual factors. Forest might be a bit knackered. Maybe a bit of a checkmate though, where neither team probably wants the ball. So there's a bit of unpredictability about that. But as we saw with Brentford versus Brighton, if there's a bit of unpredictability, things can really, really take off, can't they, for one particular player? Moments man like Mbeumo, why not? It
was a very low XG game when they played Forest earlier this season. So maybe like you say that, they lost 2-0 in that game and Brentford, but maybe it is one of those games where it's just the matchup stylistically just lead to a low scoring affair.
Absolutely. But
contextually, I'd say the opposite. Contextually, it looks like it'll be a goal fest. Stylistically, it looks like it'll be quite close. So I guess we don't know which will come out on top there.
Sure.
I just think that Mbeumo, at the very least, will give you 90 mins of pens, corners, and goal threat and assist threat. So he's never a bad option. Palmer and Mbeumo are 2 assets, which if you told me they're in your free hit team, I'd go great free hit. And if you told me they weren't, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. I wouldn't say for either of them, like, oh, you've got to have them. They are genuine. And the midfielders, the position, as we'll look at in a second, like you've got Manetzi, Bowen, Iwobi, Matoma, like players that are genuinely great for this week that would be good alternatives. So you really don't need to go. And even like you could have Barnes, Murphy, Diaz, Salah. There you go. That's your midfield 4. And I wouldn't, again, bat an eyelid. So don't feel the need to go for them. But as someone that loves minutes and routes to points, it's difficult to overlook at least one of them. How much value do you give penalty takers? There's a question I wanted to ask because I looked at that top 4 of Barnes, Murphy, Diaz, Jota. I'm not saying you should go for that. There's lots of minutes risk there. Minutes aren't great in general. But let's say I'm very close. I think Barnes and Mbeumo are 50-50. But Barnes has the better fixture and Mbeumo's got the pens and set pieces. Where are you as a manager on that?
Are you buying them or free hitting?
Let's just say having those assets. So let's say buying them.
So if I'm buying them, I think that basically penalties, you can't legislate for them week to week. You can. I've seen in the past, like, ludicrous studies where people are trying to read the tea leaves in terms of this team gives up a lot of penalties because there's a particularly slow defender, which can sometimes come off, but most of the time it's just sort of false psychology. It's that little bit extra, really, when it comes to your picks, which if it's a dead heat in your analysis, it's the kicker. And that's the thing that kind of makes you think, yeah, okay, maybe I'll go with a player like that for the long term. Yeah. On a free hit, it's also maybe a kicker. So maybe you'd be thinking, okay, 2 players, I can't really tell between them. Maybe there's some fixture similarities. Maybe if one player's got a ridiculously better fixture but less minutes, another player's got good minutes but also is on penalties, I'd maybe, I know it's boring, but be tempted to kind of play it safe, as it were, and just go with the Pentake who's got minutes behind him, which I guess would be kind of your Boomo over buying a Barnes.
Absolutely. Before we move on to the forwards, so we've said that Mbeumo is probably the best buy in terms of midfielders, right? Yes. Like if you've only got one, regardless of price, you've got a position you can pick up in the team, and Mbeumo would be that guy. Yeah. Other midfielders to buy? Bowen on the list for you?
Kluivert, I think, would be second up. Again, easy fixture versus Man United this week. Who knows what team they're going to be putting out? I mean, it's just the way it is at the moment. Like, you've got to put United and Spurs in the same category as the relegated trio. No, Ipswich aren't technically relegated yet, but you know what I mean. Just because of the way in which their focus is predominantly elsewhere. There's an okay chance that Bournemouth have a double. We will find that out kind of later on, and maybe in 36 as well. So, and potential extra fixture there. I think their running's okay as well, Bournemouth, if I remember correctly. So,
yeah, it's a good run.
Yeah, another one to think about, and also on penalties.
Absolutely, and some set pieces. And again, so he's like a little mini Mbeumo, I suppose. Probably not as quite as good, but definitely up there.
Yeah.
Bowen, would he be interesting to you? He's got the Man United and Spurs game, so literally playing the 2 teams that are going to be rotating for Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I picked him out as one of my differentials, spoiler alert, but it's more because of the Brighton game. I said earlier on, pegged that as maybe kind of a 2-2, 3-2, something like that. But Brighton have conceded 11 goals in the last 4 games. It's pretty crazy, really, in terms of kind of where their season is. Maybe they're on the pebbly beach already. Yeah. But Bowen's just a bit of a talisman of West Ham, who are on that sort of very, very long pre-season. His data's been okay. I think it's on 25th for underlying data, but still, I think that there are goals in that game, given how both teams have been playing. And I think Bowen would be an absolutely fine pick to buy, as you said, with those good fixtures coming, and also just a good player for your free hit if you want to differentiate.
Perfect. Cool. So looking to buy midfielders this week, I think Mbeumo, Kluivert, Bowen, probably in that order.
Yeah.
And in terms of free hit, I mean, you'll see my free hit soon, but I think having a Newcastle midfielder makes sense if you can find a space, at least Salah or maybe another Liverpool midfielder if you want to risk it. I think Palmer and Mbeumo are fine picks, but you can definitely differentiate. Other names on this list like Matoma, Bowen, Menetzi, Iwobi, Gibbs-White, these are options you could go for. You just need to weigh up in your mind what's most important to you. Is it minutes? Is it fixture? Is it underlying data? Because if a player has all 3, they're dead certs. Like if Mbeumo had Ipswich this week, we're not talking about it.
Yeah.
But each of these players is missing either the minutes or the penalties or the set pieces or the fixture. So you have to weigh up in your mind as a manager what you pay most attention to. So guys, FPL Therapy continues to be sponsored by Club, the wonderful free-to-play fantasy football mobile game. There will be a link down below, as always, to download it. So many of you have downloaded it and are really enjoying it, which I love to see. And it's a good time to download it as we come towards the end of the season to get you prepared and ready for next season as well. This is how my team looks for blank Gameweek 34. I'm slightly over the budget cap, but don't worry about that too much. Honestly, I've already got an 11, which is pretty good considering there aren't things like free hit. So I've just had to make sure I've carried players through that have fixtures this week. I've got, at the moment, triple Wolves for Leicester at home, which looks good. I've got Palmer, Salah, Isak as my front 3 as well. So I don't desperately need players, but I would like a bit of bench cover. You can see all those players at the moment that are blanking on my bench. So I could really do with basically another player that plays in 34. As long as they start and have a fixture, they are good for me. So I'll pass the phone to Tom. All you have to do is click meet now. A player will pop up. And then, so tap to reveal.
What we got?
Okay. So core, please say rare would be nice. Rare, good.
Okay.
Forward, please play. Tottenham. Oh, Tottenham just stinks, doesn't it? Richarlison. He missed 3 big chances against Nottingham Forest, didn't he?
Sorry, mate.
Perfect. No, do you know what? If he starts, it's some cover. Not a great fixture against Liverpool. Missed 3 big chances himself. I'm actually going to sign him because I just need some bench cover. But hopefully Manny, although probably not likely, brings you some slightly better players than Richarlison. But yeah, if you do want to check it out and get involved, I highly recommend it. Good time to download it, like I said, prepare for next season. There will be a tutorial coming soon, by the way. A few people asked me for that. We'll make sure to record that ahead of next season. But click the link, get involved, and thanks to Club for sponsoring the episode. We spoke about penalty takers. one of the reasons I asked that is I'm to and fro at the moment, Kluivert, even Ilson, because at the moment on your screen right now, you'll see the top 12 selected forwards for Gameweek 34, sorted by non-penalty XGI per 90 again. Even Ilson has absolutely ridiculous data. So non-penalty XGI per 90 since returning from injury is 0.81. Cunha is in second at 0.67. Wissa, 0.56 in third. And then Strand Larsen makes up the top four with 0.54. So 2 Wolves forwards are in there. We've got Wissa in there, who is always there. But even Ilson, like, really leading the line. Then we've got Welbeck in fifth at 0.48. Wood in sixth at 0.42. Wood's data is frighteningly consistent. Like all season, it's been around 0.4. We've got Rao at 0.4. Isak in eighth, dropped all the way down to 0.4 XGI over the last 10. So we'll discuss him. Then you've got Jackson, Solanke, Gakpo, Vardy. That was honestly just to put players on the graphic in all honesty, although you could look for a Jackson with Tarkowski out. So on even Ilson, in that time, 0.78 non-penalty XG per 90. It's the best in the league. Second best in the league, and this isn't just players that play in 34 now. This is anyone in the league over that period of time. Mateta is second at 0.55.
Yeah.
So he is just in a league of his own. Now, contextually, he had 3 chances in that time, which were like all 0.9 XG. So there are a few big chances which have hugely skewed the data, but I'm looking right now, I would really like Kluivert or even Ilson. Even Ilson doesn't have pens. Even Ilson doesn't have set pieces. Kluivert has both of those.
Yep.
But even Ilson's data is just significantly better. This is where I'm like, how much weighting do I give to set pieces and to penalties?
I think you've also got another issue there, which is that you've only got 3 forwards.
Yep.
And trying to fit. So basically, Cunha, Isak, and then which one?
Yeah.
I'm not giving you the finger there. Is it Evan Nilsson? Is it Visser? I mean, how does that sort of work? I just think that maybe Evan Nilsson creeps in as your third striker. I'm interested to see where you've gone actually with that. I'm sure there'll be some people out there who are going Cunha and Larsen, for example.
Yeah.
But it's just whether there's room at the end and where that sort of the resource lies. Do they both cover each other as such? Does the fact that Kluivert's on penalties means that even though his underlying data isn't as good as Evan Nilsson's, he's got that penalty. There's the threat of a penalty.
Yeah.
And does that kind of account for not having Evan Nilsson? I do really like Evan Nilsson. Another one of those players that I'm really considering to buy this week. He or Visser are probably the two that I'm thinking about, unless I buy Cunha and then commit to a -4 later on down the line. Again, quite a good fixture this week, I'm afraid, against Man United, and top of my punts for this week, because one of the things I didn't notice until you asked me to look at it was just how low his ownership is.
Yeah.
One of those players who, on free hit, you may be looking at it, maybe scrolling through socials and thinking, everyone's kind of talking about Evan Nilsson, lots of people have got Evan Nilsson, but actually when you step back, he's going to be one of those players who on live FPL is going to be a dice man for you, one of those players who's going to be really impactful to your game week. So really exciting little pick, and a really good game to have him for one, or even to buy for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I really like the idea of him, and I need to stop being so obsessed with penalties, because you don't need it. Like his XGI there is without penalties, so you don't need them to put up really, really good underlying numbers. And I do think that, again, stylistically, Man United really do struggle against good forwards, and he's so good at pressing. I can already see a mistake from us playing out the back and even Ilson pressing us. So yeah, really, really nice option. I think it's just one of those things where, when Bournemouth had their good fixtures, he was just coming back from fitness. There wasn't that time to buy him.
Dango was playing all
exactly.
the time,
and then they went into a slightly trickier fixture run. We had the doubles as well. So there was just never a point for many people to go out there and buy even Ilson. So he's just stayed quite low. We saw it actually with Mateta earlier in the season for a very similar reason. There just wasn't quite that run where you could go out there and pick him up. You said Cunha. He's in everyone's free hit at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we are overthinking this. So the only reason he definitely started in 33, we can confirm, is because Bellegarde was out injured, right? Because previously we've had Strand Larsen as the 9 and then Bellegarde and Manetzi as the 2 10s. That system has been working brilliantly. They won 4 or 5 on the bounce without Cunha. They didn't need Cunha. They've been scoring goals. Bellegarde's been arguably their best player. Like if you speak to Wolves fans, Bellegarde has been exceptional. So you wouldn't be surprised if Bellegarde comes back into the 11. So then you say, well, you've got then Strand Larsen and Manetzi. Vitor Pereira come out in a press conference and said the reason that Strand Larsen has been sensational is because of Manetzi. He said, give Strand Larsen credit, but Manetzi playing close to him, playing off of him, he's been brilliant. And Manetzi's been getting 90 minutes most weeks. I don't think Cunha will start as the 9 ahead of Strand Larsen. I just don't think that's his position. So what you're telling me then is if Strand Larsen does start, his minutes might not be perfect. Someone might come off the bench, but then you've got 2 of Bellegarde, Manetzi, Cunha to play. If you're just playing your best team, Cunha's obviously going to start.
Yeah.
But if Bellegarde's fit, I just don't know that that's a dead cert. Am I overthinking that? Or
A little bit. I mean, who's the better player, Cunha or Bellegarde?
yeah, it's Cunha.
And no, they've just had a historic win against United, right? You're right in that the injury has meant that he's kind of opened the door, but his performance didn't do him any disfavors, right? And I think that, given the fact that there was always going to be a time at which he works himself kind of back in, be it through his performances or be it through an opportunity like this, I just wonder whether now this is kind of the team that Pereira's going to be sat with, because at the end of the day, if you said that Menezes and Larson have got that kind of relationship together and the manager kind of picks up on that, is Bellegarde versus Cunha. It does seem that Cunha, depending on what Bellegarde's kind of injury is, I don't know. Cunha's come had a very, very good game. I think you're probably going to see Cunha start again, really. And in terms of FPL, free bonus despite not getting a direct goal contribution. I mean, that just shows what Cunha is, an absolute bonus machine. It only needs an assist and you've got 9 points. It needs a couple of goals and you're kind of bound to get the free bonus on top of it. So yeah, very, very high kind of baseline score, elevating the floor of your team. Yeah, I can see why Cunha is in everyone's team. And if I don't own him, I'm going to be incredibly scared of him.
I don't love him as a buy, though.
No.
For the reasons that I just said, because yes, I think this week, unless Bellegarde is already back in training, which we don't know at the time of recording, and he's absolutely 100% fully fit, it just makes sense to just say, Bellegarde, take your time, Cunha will play again.
Absolutely.
But then once Bellegarde is fully fine, Cunha isn't staying, right? There are really heavy rumours that he's going to sign for Manchester United. Good luck to him, but we really need him. But if that's true, and I can't see a world in which he stays, invest for the future. Because Menezes, Bellegarde and Strand Larsen could be their front three next season. Playing that for the final few weeks does make sense. So I think Cunha is great on free hit if we think he'll start. I don't love him as a transfer. And I think if he was in your position, you said it might even force a -4 in the future.
It does, yeah.
I think you just pray.
Yeah, it's not worth it, is it? And and if you come into this week, you're not free hitting, you've got 3, 4, 5 free transfers. Absolutely. I think if you can plan to buy him in and take him out this week, Man City, I think in 35, take him out afterwards. But in my position with 1 free transfer, where I'm going to have to take a hit anyway, it's one of those where it's so precious and it's probably just worth me looking at an Evan Nilsson, almost definitely looking at a Visser and just thinking, right, okay, that's where I'm going to go this week because they can stay in my team afterwards. With Cunha, can he quite do it? I think he's coming out in terms of the analytical models fairly well, and you can tell why. But contextually, as you said, it probably makes a lot more sense for them to invest in that kind of front three for next year and maybe protect Cunha as well from injury. So
exactly, yeah, for sure. There are different ways that you can view this. You could just view it as, well, Vitor Pereira doesn't care about that. He just wants to win games. And for him, the best thing he can do for his managerial career and for Wolves is just win the games. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cunha does start, but I just think there's enough doubt for me buying. I'm glad you mentioned Wisser. I know this sounds crazy, but seemingly just the forgotten man every week. He puts up great data every week, gets great returns. If Mbeumo's involved, Wisser's involved. I can almost guarantee Wisser will be in fewer than 5 to 10% of free hits. So if I was you, that offers a great opportunity in terms of, we've spoken about the Forest matchup, that they're going to be fatigued. Brentford have had the rest. Wisser is just fantastic. He always gets big chances. And then you've got Wisser in place for 35 onwards. It's exactly the player I'd be looking at if I was buying this week.
Yeah, he's my number one target to be bringing in, to be honest with you, Ross. I mean, if I had kind of more price issues, which I don't, then I may have already made that move already. But yeah, it makes absolute sense to go with this. He and Mbeumo, the relationship there, aren't they the top kind of scoring duo this year?
Yeah, both over 15 goals this season. They were the first team in the Premier League to have two players for their team.
Absolutely phenomenal. And we've already said that with Forest on paper, you might look at it thinking, hang on a minute. People buy Mbeumo because he's obviously had a big score this week. Someone like this, who said perennially undervalued. I've been over at Thiago and they're kind of the new striker they brought in to replace him. He got injured, maybe taking some minutes away from Visser. So you're not looking at maybe 90 minutes for Visser all the time. But still, he's doing himself no disfavors in his performances. And I think that he'd certainly be one someone like me should be buying, or at least looking to buy, and others on free hit. You can't go wrong with a Visser, but I can see why people might be looking at an Evan Nilsson or other players on this list like Welbeck and Wood. On
Welbeck, I think he's just a great pick. I think maybe people are slightly overdoing it. How great. He started off super differential and then he's sneaking into more and more drafts. Now it's almost like don't over-egg how good of an option he is, but always good data. Always good minutes, especially when João Pedro's been out, and then the few occasions he tends to get really good minutes because it's one fewer player to obviously that plays 90, because João Pedro will normally play 90 if he's on. Welbeck should have penalties. West Ham aren't particularly good. But as we said, maybe not as bad defensively as people are suggesting. I just think he's a really solid pick.
Yeah, he's all right. I've got not very much to say about that one. I think I'm absolutely fine with people kind of making the 2 + 2 = 4 in terms of João Pedro being suspended, therefore Welbeck's good. I think that entire game is going to be quite an unpredictable one, as mentioned, just because West Ham probably not really kind of minds focused on the season. Brighton perhaps have hit a bit of a tailspin. So I think there will be goals in that game. And I don't see any problem with buying in Welbeck if you do fancy it. Nice nostalgia pick as well. I'm sure he'll be there next year. But just in case he's not, might be your last time to buy that guy Welbs.
Exactly. And what about Chris Wood?
Well, I'm sure you'll know, massive overperformer this year. One of those players who I've certainly suffered at the hands of not owning. But yes, back with a bang against Spurs. One goal disallowed and then straight away, classic Chris Wood goal. And I think that he is one of those players who you could put in as kind of just a bit of a cornerstone of a free hit. As described with Forest earlier on, the problem is they've got a midweek. They've got a game before their game in midweek, and anything could happen in that, and that would put me off Chris Wood in general. Plus, there's going to be that sort of the novelty effect, so people don't want Chris Wood because they want something new and shiny that they haven't owned before. As
we said as well, Brentford up in 6th for XGC over the last 10. They're not. Brentford are never a solid defence, but last season they were only 7th or 8th for XGC. This season, over the last 10, they're up at 6th. I think across the season they're middling. They're not a bad defence. They're not a defence that just roll over. And Forest aren't an attack that ever create that many chances. I could really see this being quite low scoring. And I think one of Wissa and Burmo Wood will probably return and they'll probably mop up all 3 bonus. So that they probably will do quite well if they get the return. It's just will they? One more player that I wanted to discuss in terms of potentially picking up, this, again, wouldn't be a very good buy, but if Moniz isn't in the squad again, because he wasn't in the squad for Gameweek 33, Raul Jimenez against Southampton's not a bad punt on a free hit.
Not at all.
But I hate targeting Southampton. You talk about the bane of your life, like Southampton's the bane of my life. Like every week that I try and attack Southampton, it goes horribly.
Yeah, you and Sam have the same experience.
I don't know why though. Like they're bad. Like when you look at the data, they're bad. When you look at eye test, they're bad. When you look at underlying data, bad. Where they are in the league, bad. And then every week they just seem to score a goal against my team or like a triple captain, obviously Haaland against Southampton over the season. Yeah. But I don't think that should put you off massively if you're looking at Raul Jimenez. If Moniz isn't fully ruled out, bit too much of a risk for me because before this game, Moniz had looked very much first choice for the past few. I think there are maybe better forwards than Raul.
I think so as well. I think he just, again, gets crowded out. And I think maybe you look at Iwobi, who's one of my differentials, if you're looking for a Fulham attacker.
Yep.
You've got to have, I think, probably be looking at one against Southampton. But yeah, as you said, Southampton have ruined my life this year.
Cool. Any other forwards you think deserve a discussion, or have we covered in there, do you reckon?
I think we've pretty much covered all of them. I think we were kind of starting to get into the dregs a little bit. I think maybe we didn't give that much discussion, give that much airtime to Larson, perhaps. So
5 goals in 5 weeks.
We know that he's going to be playing compared to Acuna. Well, I think we probably know he's going to be playing as well. But Larson has been looking better at the sharp end. So if you're kind of thinking, right, okay, I'm going to prioritise goals in my free hit rather than expected points from kind of Acuna from the assist from the bonus, maybe you could be thinking, yeah, okay, I maybe for Larson. In fact, as a duo, if you did want to double up here, I wouldn't mind that at all.
I think Leicester are the worst team in the league for me.
Yeah,
I think they're worse
100%.
than Southampton as things stand. I guess Isak actually finally, before we move on, is 2 goals and 1 assist in 7 weeks. He's not had more than 78 minutes on any occasion in that time. You're not going to sell him if you're not on free hit. I think that would be absolutely crazy, or at least not this week. If you were on a free hit and you were quite far off, I don't hate the idea of dropping him. I mean, it could be absolutely ridiculous if he goes to scores a hat-trick, but form-wise, dropped off a little bit. I mean, we say Palmer's dropped off. His data is much worse than Palmer's, 0.4 XGI.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has dropped off in terms of that. I would say that there's an element of overcomplicating it sometimes. It depends on kind of where you are, really. Because if you own him, but you don't captain him, I expect his effective ownership this week's going to be over 100%. And it's whether you really kind of swing for the fences if you go against him. I just don't know, given the fixture he's got in front of him, where you go other than that. With especially, it's that sword versus shield thing again, isn't it, really?
Yep.
If you're thinking this week, right, I'm definitely captaining Salah, then you're kind of carrying Isak as a sort of a shield against kind of the potential whatever you get.
It's just rank protection, isn't it?
It's rank protection. And some people may look at that and think, well, that's a bit boring. I'm just going to swing for the fence this week. So there's definitely an argument to look at the underlying data and look at kind of how he's been doing recently to the eye and think, actually, yeah, maybe you'd be looking at him coming off in 70th minute and Wilson coming on. They have had a bit of a break now compared to before they had the doubles.
Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be decent captaincy. So a lot of it depends where you are rank-wise in terms of whether you go for Isak or not, I think.
Yeah, because if you show me a team with like Eva Nilsson, Cunha, Welbeck as your front 3, obviously Isak's missing, but that's great. So I think I would need to be really chasing. I'm going to put an arbitrary number of 30 points plus off of mini league leader or a target rank.
Yeah.
I think if you're where we are, 20, I don't think you need to, at least in 34, take huge risks like that. I think you can start taking small ones. But if we're 20 points off in 36, we'll probably be doing something similar of like highly backing against those assets. Cool. Right. Next section is quick fire questions. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions. For each of them, you can either go 1-word answer or you can give me like 5 to 10 seconds, but just the first thing that comes to your mind. We've already discussed a lot of it. Best captain for Gameweek 34.
Salah.
Would you include Palmer on your free hit?
Yeah.
Would you include Mbermo on your free hit?
Yeah.
Murphy or Barnes this week?
Barnes.
One differential player you think everyone should have on their free hit? Or most people should have?
Evan Nilsson.
Perfect. Very nice. Cool. Moving on to differentials. We've actually had someone finally top the leaderboard that isn't me. I topped the leaderboard back in Game Week 13 when I didn't have a guest, and I've just been sat there ever since, and it looks very corrupt. But in Game Week 33, obviously, I've not seen the second game for Oscar's predictions, but Oscar predicted Kivior, Marino, and Ruben Diaz, who are currently on a combined 17 points, and they obviously have 3 games left. Oscar could comfortably top the leaderboard if they get more than 13. But in Game Week 32, Harry's final score was 30 points. He had the Fabian Schär 15 points or whatever it was now, and the Kieran Trippier assist. So not only does Harry get lucky in FPL, he also gets lucky in the prediction game as well. But no, well done to Harry there. So he's top of the leaderboard with 30 points. I'm in second with 26. You're going to do very well to beat 30 because you're not doing it in a double. For next season, I think what I'm going to do, let me know which you'd prefer, by the way, is either in double game weeks, they have to pick single game week players to make it a bit more fair, or we change the game completely and we do more of a head-to-head with me, where it's the difference in comparison to me rather than the outright score.
Yeah, or they get a certain number of points.
Exactly.
Rather than actual FPL points.
Exactly, because there are certain weeks where it's just much better to pick the players than others. But you've given us 3 nice ones. I'm just going to flash them all up on the screen because we've discussed each of them. But you've got Bowen, Eva Nilsson, and Iwobi. I'm surprised that Eva Nilsson was the one I was most surprised at, like you say, about the ownership. But they're all just matchups that I think work for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Bowen, Brighton defensively fallen off a bit, conceding for fun. That's 11 goals in the last 4. West Ham, no great shakes, but Bowen hasn't... He's not been great, but it's still the talisman in the 20s for underlying data. And yeah, he's got legs for the remainder of the year as well if you want to get him. But yeah, I do like that kind of fixture for goals this week with the unpredictability. Evan Nilsson already discussed, great underlying data, great fixture. And then Iwobi actually second to Jimenez in terms of underlying data for Fulham. So if you're targeting Southampton, no room at the in attack, then maybe don't trust Sessegnon either. So maybe Iwobi's the man to go for. So yeah, those are the 3. I wouldn't be surprised if those 3 will return, to be honest. And I don't think I have any of them basically this week, which is really sad. I'm not free hitting.
Most free hit drafts I've seen haven't had the 3 of them. Okay. So you've chosen good differentials there that are probably genuinely are going to be differentials. Cool, right. We've spoken about free hit a lot. So what I'm going to do first is show my free hit draft, and then we'll discuss Tom's team. So if you are, again, not on free hit making transfers, that will probably be quite a useful section because Tom will go through the players he's looking to buy. So my draft, I've changed since the one I sent you.
Okay.
I've been tinkering a little bit. So I'll read out the whole team and then I'll discuss, because obviously it's combinations here. And if you put in one player, you have to take out another. So at the moment, in goal, I've gone for Nick Pope, which seems to be a highly unpopular one on the free hit just because there are so many good, like Barnes, Murphy, Schär, Trippier, Livramento. But I've got Nick Pope and Livramento. So I've doubled up on the Newcastle defence. And I've got Ait-Nouri and Sessegnon. The reason for that is if you go back to the defensive data, the top 3 for defensive data are Sessegnon, Livramento, Ait-Nouri in terms of attacking threat. So I've basically chosen the 3 most attacking players I can. And then obviously Nick Pope just to double up because I don't really have a spot in my midfield at the moment for a Newcastle attacker. My midfield 4 is then Luis Diaz, Salah, Mbermo, Palmer. About as boring as you can get, really. I hate how boring it is. Salah is just obvious. I'm probably going to captain him. I've gone for Mbermo and Palmer for the reasons I said throughout the podcast. 90 minutes normally, penalties, set pieces. Neither of them have on paper perfect fixtures, but in the context of Tarkowski injury, in the context of Nottingham Forest not having much of a break and Brentford having one, I don't hate the matchups. And then my 4th and final midfielder is Luis Diaz, because I think I want more than just Salah in that game, which should be the game where they win the title at Anfield. I do really like the idea of Diogo Jota just to spice it up a bit, because I'm seeing so many people with Diaz and Salah, and I've got Mbermo and Palmer who just feel really boring. I'm tempted to just chuck a Diogo Jota in there. And then my front 3 at the moment, Cunha, Isak, probably don't need to discuss. And I've gone for Eva Nilsson as my 3rd forward. I've got Cliver as my fifth midfielder on the bench. So that is the debate at the moment, is if I do want a Bournemouth attacker, do I go for Ivan Ilson, who's got more goal threat, better data, or Cliver for the pens and set pieces? If I go for Cliver for the pens and set pieces, I'm then like in Burmo, Palmer, Cliver, then my sort of assets.
Yeah.
In terms of my backup goalkeeper on the bench, I've got Kepa, who I think is going quite under the radar again because Manchester United are pretty rubbish. I've got Cucurella and Van Dijk as my defenders. So that's the free hit. Roast me. What don't you like? What do you like?
I think actually it's really good. I like the fact that you've got your coverage in terms of Bournemouth attack, and you're looking at kind of Evan Nilsson versus Clive. I'd probably just about err on the side of Evan Nilsson, but either one, you've got to be true to who you are in terms of Clive. So if that's the one that you're going to be more annoyed about leaving penalties to Bournemouth, are you going to be more annoyed at that,
exactly.
or is it an Evan Nilsson brace? Which one are you going to hate yourself the least for not having played? But I think the composition looks absolutely fine. And before, I think you had Boomer on the bench, for example. And that would have been the point where I said, just probably have Boomer and Palmer. A lot of the time, these things do pick themselves, and we spend a lot of the time in our own heads looking at A, B, and C, when actually just part of route A is absolutely fine. Defensively, I don't mind it. I think that because you haven't got room at the end effectively for a Newcastle midfielder, that having Pope in goal, I don't mind that at all. You're looking at probably, I don't know who the goalkeeper for Wolves will be this week. I've got Sarr. I don't think he's going to be fit. So maybe Pope kind of wins that. It's Pope or Leno, isn't it, really?
Yep.
And then Sessegnon would be one that, you've got to keep your ears to the ground. If you think that he's likely to play, if it wasn't an injury, then absolutely. If not, just keep it simple and swap into Robinson to have some kind of Southampton kind of cover and a player versus Southampton. But makes absolute sense to me, Ross. I don't really see much in terms of there's nothing out there apart from Sessegnon maybe minutes which sticks out to me as being a big error effectively.
I think the draft I sent you before, it had, so instead of Mbermo, it had Barnes, and Mbermo was on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously I couldn't go for Nick Pope, so I had Leno, and then instead of Sessegnon, I think I had Cucurella or someone like that, or along those lines. So I think that the decision I need to firstly make is, am I happy to go without any other Newcastle attackers? Because if I want Barnes or Murphy in, immediately I have to switch this up. I could keep Mbermo and then go for Barnes instead of Ivan Ilson and then go for a 3-5-2. But I like Ivan Ilson as a pick that I trust through the data eye test, and he's slightly differential. But then I just don't have that space. I could, I suppose, go for Barnes rather than Luis Diaz or Jota, but then I'm just going to be watching that game. I reckon Liverpool put 3 or 4 past Spurs to win the league, and I'm like, that was so obvious on paper.
Yeah.
So I kind of want another bit of attacking action there. And like I said, I just like that this setup gives me not only the 3 most attacking defenders, but then also Pope, I think, is a great shout this week. He's being overlooked because of the other Newcastle assets, maybe rightly so. I like this composition at the moment. Like you said, I think it's got a good balance, but if I were to make changes now, it would be getting a Newcastle attacker in, maybe getting Cliver in, and also maybe getting Cucurella in there, because I just do think that there is a chance for a clean sheet.
Yeah, maybe Cucurella over Sessegnon then, and just kind of, then you end up with, I don't know, Leno in goal, which seems a bit weird having your Southampton coverage being a goalkeeper.
I was tempted, if we're in real doubt around Sessegnon's minutes, I am tempted to just put Cucurella in and just go no Fulham.
Yeah, maybe.
I just because they have a good fixture doesn't necessarily mean that their assets are perfect. And I think Sessegnon's the one that stands out. Leno's no better than someone like a Pope. I don't think Robinson is that much better than someone like a Cucurella. And then Rao and Iwobi, they're fine, but they're not better necessarily than Mbermo and even Ilson.
Yeah.
So when you look at it more that way, rather than just saying I've got no Fulham players, I don't think it's that bad to go without them. Cool. So that's my free hit as things stand. Let us know in the comments what you would give it out of 10. So, Tom, do you want to read out your team for those on audio and then talk us through what your plan is right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought I'd have 8 players, but then kind of when I was driving somewhere for Easter weekend, I saw Jose Sar's just gone down the tunnel from in the warm up injured. So down to 7.
Is he definitely out? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, so I had 8 and I was thinking, okay, take minus 4, gets 10, be all right. So, I mean, I had Sarr in goal, who's got Leicester at home. If he does play, great. If he doesn't, it's just the goalkeeper. So it could have been worse. Livramento, Milenkovic and Dunk as the back 3. I think Van Hecker is also injured. So Dunk is going to play. Not that matters to anybody except for me. But Murphy, Palmer and Salah in mid, and then Isaac up front. That's it. That's all I've got, Ross.
So your 3 blankers in your 11 at the moment are Sarr, Marmoush, Mateta, and then a bench of Asensio, Munoz, Gvardiol.
That's it. So I've got 1 free transfer, and I think that I always thought I'd take a minus 4, get probably get rid of Mateta and Sarr, because Asensio could potentially have a double in 36, so he might have to stay on.
It's like Stockholm syndrome with Asensio.
It's depressing, isn't it? But yeah, I think Mateta and Sarr out, and Bumo, and it could be Bumo and Vissa who come in, to be honest.
I'd love that. I really would love that.
It really does depend on kind of where I land. There is a world where I just kind of go, right, okay, I just really want Cunha for 1 week, and then I move them on to Vissa the week after. There is a world where I say, right, I'll go for Bumo and Evan Nilsson. The fact is, I think that I'm going to probably keep Isak now for the rest of the year, even though the fixtures aren't that great from here, and probably almost definitely keep Marmoush for the rest of the year. So I've only got one forward slot to play with. Do I double up on Brentford? Do I kind of take a Bournemouth player in there? I've got to make that decision this week as well. Because I do need to make 2 transfers, I think, just to be competitive. And my goal this week is just to be competitive. So get that captaincy right. Try to make up for the -4 with the players that I bring in. As you said, probably this is going to be a good one because he will be a differential both for me and against free hitters.
Yep.
And then Bumo, just kind of a bit of a hygiene pick. But at least I'll have him a little week early, and then hope the rest of the week goes my way. But that's the bet I laid him from free hitting this week. Knew it would happen.
It's not a bad team though. I think Sarah, Mateta, 2 and Burmo, and one of even Nilsson or Vissa, and you are set up not only for the remainder of the season, but it also does look good this week. And we know that every week 2 or 3 of your players get 0 to 2 points.
I'm fine with that.
Just because we have 11 doesn't necessarily mean that they outscore. So fingers crossed for a Jose Sarr return. Fingers crossed for a dunk bullet header, and then you're laughing.
Oh yeah, dunk bullet header would be amazing. I retire on a high.
Cool, perfect. Right, that's the podcast, mate. Thank you very much for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks very much for having me. Yeah, it's been really, really cool.
No worries at all. If you've enjoyed what Tom's had to say today, hopefully you have, then make sure to check out Who Got the Assist. And again, if you've enjoyed Pricey's episodes this season as well, the 2 of them work really, really well together. Record every single week. Really good content. Also something slightly different to what you would normally see as well. So I will link it down below in the description. Available on all audio platforms and also on YouTube as well. So do check it out. Also, if you have enjoyed this episode, please do make sure to drop that like button, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, tickle the subscribe button, and also make sure to rate 5-star on audio as well. I do really appreciate it. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.